Jaylen Brown now becoming the highest paid player in NBA history, a 5-year extension worth $304 million. Just insane money.
Yeah.
But you got to respect it, got to tip the cap. What's your reaction to the signing, and what do you think of it overall, Scotty?
Yeah, it's insane to hear that come out of your mouth. You know, the highest paid player in NBA history. Do I think that Jaylen Brown is the most deserving player in NBA history? No. But this is where the league is trending. This is the trajectory of max or super max extension contracts and where they're going these days. And my first reaction to it, man, and maybe it's just because I'm coming from like a tormented Sixers fan perspective, but my first thought of it was, yeah, you know, get around that wave of drama that could come over the season if you don't give Jaylen Brown that extension. Just give your star the money that he's looking for and eliminate that chance of drama. You secure your big three with him, Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis going forward. I know they still got to get an extension done with Kristaps, I believe, but nonetheless, you have your core there going forward. And Jaylen Brown's happy. I think that's the biggest thing. You want to keep your stars happy in a sense so you can avoid a bunch of the drama that you've seen transpire in Philadelphia. So from that perspective, my instant reaction was like, way to get the job done. You've sealed that up. You can move on to the next part of making your team better and securing your future. But from the transactional amount of the contract, right? It is insane. It's insane from a standing of what athletes make these days in general. You saw the Mbappe rumored contract from Saudi Arabia, which it's like totaling over $1 billion for 1 year. So this is just where athletes and their salaries are going. It's where it's headed, and it's becoming uncapped. But I thought something interesting to think about with this contract is what Austin Rivers was talking about the other day. I can't remember exactly which podcast it was on, but he was talking about the Dame Lillard situation, the Harden situation, the Ben Simmons situation, and how that affects the NBA. And, you know, he's talking about how the new CBA basically makes contracts top heavy, right?
Yeah.
So one guy's getting 50 million, then maybe a role player left on that team, they're taking vet minimum contracts. And that's kind of where the Celtics are now heading, because they're going to have to give Tatum a newer extension at some point, right? Give Kristaps his extension. So you're looking at an NBA that's about to become extremely top level when you are top heavy, when you're talking about stars making the most money on teams, and then just leaving the scraps for the rest of these players. And it doesn't seem very fair, right? Going forward, it seems like a bad deal for the rest of the league, guys that just aren't considered good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's absolutely what's happening. Is the middle class of NBA players is kind of being cut apart. That it is those veteran minimums or those low values, or you're a max contract guys. And I think some of that has been correlated to the star hunting and these super teams that are being built up of trying to fit in 3 max contract guys on the same roster, which is intentionally made hard to do under the salary cap rules because they want to spread out talent. I mean, the dollar amount is going to continue to be striking because that's just a ridiculous amount of money, no matter what way you look at it. Like making $69.2 million in the year 2028 for one season is absurd. The NBA, to the players' credit and to the CBA's credit, have been very smart and calculated by cutting their own slice of the pie based on percentages, not on a set dollar amount. When you look at a league like the NFL or the MLB, where there's still this lucrative dollar sign, but it is a set amount, by negotiating like a 35% max contract, which is the case with Jaylen Brown here, you're getting whatever percentage of the league as it continues to go up. So that's why we see these numbers keep rising. It has been smart on the NBA's part, or on the NBA players' parts for sure. And it's obviously working for these guys extremely well. Jaylen Brown, for sure. Congrats to him for being the highest paid player. He's not going to be the highest paid player forever. I remember the point in time when it was Mike Conley taking the cake for the highest paid player in the NBA, which is crazy. So it kind of was his turn. There's going to be pretty soon a player making over 100 million in a season. And I think within the next handful of years, which is very insane, but I don't know. It's tough to wrap our minds fully around. The question I do want to ask you next, Scotty, is do you see Jaylen Brown playing the length of that contract in a Celtics uniform?
It's hard to say without knowing where these contracts and the amounts go. But to your point, you're talking about somebody's going to be making over $100 million per season at some point. Eventually, this contract is not going to look untradeable, right? It's going to be just a league average type of thing for a superstar. So to your point, with the friction that they've had in Boston in the past, how long it kind of took for them to get this extension done, right? Going down to the wire. No, I don't see him playing out the length of that contract. I think they end up having to break that Tatum and Jaylen Brown duo up at some point, right? Maybe it's when you give the extension to Jason Tatum for his next contract. Maybe that's when you cross that bridge. But when you look at it, it's make or break. It's win or it's win or this team needs to be broken up at this point for this Boston Celtics unit. These guys have been playing together for how many years? You talk about Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now they finally broke off and sent Marcus Smart out, which is a little bit of a dynamic change. But when you're looking at that duo, the clock is running on for them to win an NBA championship. And when you look at how the talent's being spread out across the NBA, you just can't guarantee that even over the next 2 seasons, right? So no, I would side with no. I don't see him playing out the length of that contract.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't see a world where it happens. And this is a trend. And to me, this is much more of an issue than the set dollar amount, is kind of how these are structuring, is these players are kind of getting their cake and eating it too, in the way that there's these rewards and higher dollar value for guys that are willing to stick it out and stick with the franchise that they were originally drafted by. But then to just do that and then demand a trade is when the system kind of unravels a little bit. And I think we're going to be looking at the same situation with Jaylen Brown not too long from now. I think as far as basketball-wise, there's a real argument to be made that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have too many overlapping similarities and weaknesses as players to maximize each other. Personally, I love both of them as individual talents, and I think they're such awesome players that I would be doing everything possible to just rotate your surrounding crew and until you find those right ingredients for a championship. I think they're good enough for that to be the case. But I do think that there's a little bit of a situation where Jaylen Brown feels a little bit of the second fiddle, where the red carpet has absolutely been laid out for Jason Tatum to be the guy in Boston. And rightfully so. This is no shade on Jason Tatum as a talent, and he probably is the better of the two players there. But Jaylen Brown is no slouch by any means. And I think that there will come a point in time where that continues to eat at him. And my spidey senses absolutely went off for how long this deal kind of took. I get, like, he was on vacation. I get the other things. But, like, if you're Jaylen Brown, the second that contract is put in front of you, it should be signed. And for it to take a little bit of time, to me, raise some eyebrows. So I don't know, but we will see how that plays out. I don't think this is going to be a short-term thing. I think at the minimum, this is probably a 2 to 3 year window for this core, the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But if it does not happen after that, then I do think the situation will be very different.